Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth coding challenge. In this one, I'm going to be making a script coding challenge. In this one, I'm going to be making a script to automatically generate After Effects backgrounds using basically a variety of effects, overlays, and a randomization. We're going to basically make a script where we can quickly automate any number of random backgrounds we want to give it, and these can be videos as well. I'm going to be using three main concepts to make this because I am starting from scratch but just have an idea. We're going to be looking through ways to go through effect categories and randomize that. We want to give it a video and render ability so you can automatically render them out. And also maybe to have some kind of overlay or adjustment layer effects, like some kind of warping type effects to add an additional layer of animation on top. And maybe some blurs and stuff to make nice looking backgrounds as well. Before we get started with this video, I do want to remind you down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly in the channel. And down in the description, you can check out the code for this once it's complete in the GitHub link. Follow us there and follow us on Instagram down there as well. If you're not a member already in our Discord server, you can join and get help with scripting, extensions, plugins, expressions, and much more. And lastly, you can become a member, supporter, premium supporter, or VIP on the YouTube channel, get cool perks, and help us out financially. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is figure out how we can go through all of our effects. This is located in app.effects, a global kind of thing. And with this, we have access to the display name, the category, the match name, and the version. Basically, I want to use certain categories, which are designing the generative things, and then different categories to apply effects on top of that. So let's go ahead and let's create a function called generate background. This is going to be our main function, and we're going to give this some parameters to do things like how many it's going to generate, or the size of the comps, if we want to render it, things like that. So what we can do, let's say we want to start with generating 5 backgrounds. Say var I is equal to 1, I is less than or equal to 5, increment I by 1, and each time through we're going to generate a background. And now, one thing I know about using app.effects is every After Effects has a ton of effects, and you don't necessarily want to load up all those effects every time you generate a background. We might just want to load those up at first. So looking inside of After Effects, let's create a composition and a layer so we can see the effects here. Let's pick a few categories of effects that we want to go into and randomize from. I like the idea of the Generate tab because it has quite a few nice ideas, and if you just apply these to a solid layer, it creates all sorts of different generations from scratch, which I think will be good. So let's use generate. Maybe stylize would also be a good idea to try out. Let's try and pick like 2 or 3 iterative type effects that create things from scratch, and then a few that will apply more effector and color things. Maybe we generate. Simulation's a little bit too complicated. I think we can go with those two for generation mostly. Let's include distort and color correction. In fact, I want to include blur and sharpen as well, so we can randomize some blurs. So that should be good. These will be used sort of in the first section, and then these will be applied on top for additional effects, I think. I just want to make sure the recording's still going. Good. All right, so before we run all this, let's get all of these effects lined up. So we'll say var effects is equal to app.effects. And let's get our categories. We have our generate cat, which is equal to effects. And we have the category. Or is this supposed to be... I think this needs to be the actual name, generate. And then I'll make one of these for each of them. Generate style, distort, let's call this one color, and blur. Now, just to make sure here, let's actually loop through all of our effects. We need to go ahead and double check here. We'll just say effects I and connect to After Effects. Okay, we're getting a huge list of objects. Let's check the category. So that is actually giving us the proper category we need. So instead of doing what we're doing here, let's define our categories. Style cat, distort cat, color cat, blur cat. And then I have a switch statement for our effects I and the category name. Then we'll just create a case for each of these. We have generate, and these need to be the exact case I think as After Effects was using. So generate stylize distort, color correction, and blur and sharpen. So put these in. And if it's anything else, we just won't do anything. Distort. Case. Color correction. And blur and sharpen. It's an ampersand. Yes. Alright, so if this is the case, we actually want each of these to be an array. So, as you can see, things do change as we go here, but we'll just work iteratively here to get it to work. So I'm going to make each of these an empty array. And then when we reach the case that these belong to, we'll push the current effect. And actually we just need the match name. We don't need the object really, because we just need the match name, I think. So let's grab effects I match name. That way we can use that to reapply easily. Then we'll just do this the same for the other groups here. Style cat, distort cat, color cat, and blur cat. And that, upon initialization of our script, will automatically go through all the effects one time, not multiple times, and fill it up with all the generate, stylize, distort, color correction, and other types of effects you set up. So you can remove this now. And now we can go into the sort of main generation part. For now, we just want to simulate the randomization of adding these effects, but maybe we need to decide how many to apply. So let's make that our first argument. Num effects to apply. Kind of a long variable name. That should be fine. And now we need to start getting into the randomization of things. So let's create a variable here where we decide how many we're going to generate. And let's say random num. And each time through our iteration here, we're going to set this equal to math.floor. And we're going to round up or round down math.random. Let's say times We don't want to do too many effects. Maybe 10. And just to make sure this is working the way I want. Getting a nice amount of random numbers. I'm also going to save this before it crashes. And now, each time through we'll have a new random number or random number of effects to apply. Now, how we're actually going to do it is we need to then randomize between 1 to 5 to decide if we're going to generate or distort. Or maybe we need to generate a number between 0 and 1, 1 for generate, 1 for stylize, or how we're going to do this. Let's, no matter what, apply a generate effect. So we actually first need to generate a comp. Say background comp. And I'm also going to create a global variable for our comp counter. Start that at 1. That way we can just name the comp that. And I'm going to look for the code to add a comp. Background comp will be equal to our app.project.items. We're going to add a comp. The name will be random background. And we'll add our comp counter. And then we need the width. We'll just make these all 1080p. The pixel aspect ratio 1, the duration. Let's make them, for simplicity, 10 seconds. The frame rate, 30. Actually, these could be good inputs. Let's do comp width, comp height, duration, and frame rate. These belong here. And then we'll just set our values here. 1920, 80, 10 seconds. For now, 30 FPS. Then we can simply replace these in our generation, and this will help make it a bit more, I guess, interactive or controllable. Alright, so now we have our comp generated. We're not going to quite open it up yet. We'll open it up at the end. So background comp.open in viewer. And we're going to need a app.begin and end undo group. So app.begin undo group. We're going to do this before our for loop that generates all of our background compositions. App.end undo group. We'll just call this background generation. Now we've created our composition. We're going to want to create our base layer. We'll just call it a base solid layer. This is going to be equal to our background comp.layers. We're going to add a solid. We'll make this a black solid. If I look up the code to add a solid here, we have our color, the name of our layer, which is called base layer. And then all the dimensions will make the same as the background comp. So background comp.width, background comp.height. We have, I believe that's the pixel aspect ratio, or is that the duration? Solid. Requires both. So let's just do 1 and background comp.duration. All right, now we have that. Let's apply our, let's call it the generation effect. And this will be equal to our base solid layer dot effects dot add property. And this will now need a match name. Now we've already stored all of our match names here. We just need to grab a random generate cat. The way we're going to do that is by saying generate cat. Remember, this contains all of our generation effects that are installed, and we want to grab a random index from inside of that. So the way we'll do that is grab a random number between, say, math.floor, math.random times generate cat.length, and I believe that should do it. I think we might be able to test this now. Let's go ahead and run it for the first time. Save it and run it. As you can see, we have 5 background comps created. They all have the same name. We never iterated, so we need to go comp counter ++. And not all the generation effects are actually looking good. Some of them, as you can see, don't really produce a desired effect. Some of them do, but others do not. One minor thing I'm going to do is you can see some of these effects don't start off with any visuals. I want to move it forward to where the visuals might be visible. So I'm going to say background comp.time is equal to background comp.duration times 0.5, just to move the time indicator halfway to the center of the comp. So we know that's working. Now we can start iterating more effects on top of it. You saw how fast it was, so we should have no problem generating maybe 15 now. And now we have a generation effect. Let's apply some adjustment layer effects. So I'll say adjustment layer is equal to our background comp layers, and we're going to also add a solid for this. We're simply going to create a solid layer and then set a value called adjustment layer to true, which we can say by adjustment layer dot adjustment layer, the property adjustment layer is equal to true. So let's make this a white solid, call this effects, overlay effects, and then we'll just copy all the other arguments here from our base layer. Now, the num effects to apply is not referring to our base generation that generates, gradients and things like that. It's going to be referring to how many of these other effects we apply. So let's go ahead and loop through our num effects to apply. We already are using the variable I, so let's use e. Var e is equal to 1, e is less than or equal to our number of effects to apply. And each time through, we're going to randomize between stylize, distort, color correction, and blur and sharpen. Actually, no, because then we could just keep stacking blurs. Let's randomize between these 3, and then apply a blur last, but not every time. Let's make it like a 50% chance or a 25% chance. So the way we'll do this, we need to create a variable for current overlay effect. Each time in our loop here, we're going to set this equal to something. And in fact, this is going to be a smaller part. We need to switch, or a random number again. Let's do rand. Each time through this, I'm going to say rand is equal to math.floor, math.random times 4 or 3. I'm going to test this out. Make sure I'm getting either 0, 1, or 2, or 1, 2, 3. I need only 3 values to come out of this. Is it going to give me a 3? Okay, so this needs to be... This will give me 0 between 0 to 2. So we're going to say switch rand. Random is 0, random is 1, if random is 2, those are our 3 cases. If it's 0, we're going to say that's stylize. If it is 1, we're going to say distort. And if it's 2, we're going to say color correction. All right. Now, if that's the case, our current overlay effect is going to be used in each one of these cases. If it's stylized, we need to randomize the same way we did with our generate cat. So I'm just going to grab this. In fact, we can copy this whole bit of code here from effects to the end. And we'll say adjustment layer, paste. And then instead of generate cat, this is going to be the stylized cat, style cat. And make this the same. Then we'll just do the same here for distort and color correction. Make this the color cat and the distort cat. Should be the right names. Awesome. And now lastly, in terms of effects, we want to say like 50-50 chance, or maybe let's make it the same odds as this. We'll make it a 33% chance. So we'll say re-randomize this number to a different number between 0 and 3, 0, 1, or 2. We're going to do an additional switch statement. Actually, we just need a single if. If one of the cases is met, if rand is equal to 0, then we're going to have a blur effect. And that blur effect is going to be equal to our adjustment layer, and we're going to use our blur cat group and apply a random blur effect to it. Now let's go ahead and run this and see how we're looking. All right, there's our first maybe interesting looking effect. The thing is, we have so many of these that, you know, it can take a little bit to get through all the designs. And it seems like right now we have a much lower success rate than we might want. So we could do something maybe like export the thumbnails and then use those as reference to see which ones are looking good. But right now we are succeeding in applying these random effects. We're also not currently changing their values, which is totally fine. Let's see what we should do next. We've used our effect categories. We have the video ability, but it's not necessarily animated. And we might want to render some of these. So what we're going to do, let's create a desktop folder for our screenshots. We'll just call this backgrounds. And we're going to reference this in our script. We can just call this as an argument our export folder. And I'll provide that with a folder object, my desktop backgrounds. And now we can just save it, and we're going to do this with a single line of code, which is coming in another tutorial in another time, which we're just going to use real quick. There will be a single quick tip tutorial going over this, but we're just going to save this as a PNG. And the time, let's use the background comp.time. The file object is going to be export folder.fsname plus background comp.name plus PNG. I believe that should work. Let's try this out and see if it will export these images for us. Perfect. So as you can see, it's going to have some of them with much more visual fidelity and that are filling up with a lot more information. But now the goal of this whole thing is to sort of make it a lot easier to view if there's any nice visuals that we can use. So I'm thinking maybe we need to limit which generations we use. There's quite a few effects, but we need to figure out which ones we should avoid. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. And I'm just going to use that as a reference and grab only the effects I want. It's going to be a little bit more specific for the generate cat. We're only going to want to store the generation effects if their names don't include whatever I decided I don't want. So let's say effects I dot display name, or it's a display name does not equal, and now we can say, you know, audio spectrum, and then just go down the list now. Paste this a couple times. So we have audio spectrum, audio waveform, beam is fine, CC glue gun, and all these other light bursts and stuff. CC light rays might be cool. CC light sweep. CC threads. Cell pattern, circle, ellipse. While these are generative effects, they're not really going to be super visible. Eyedropper fill. I think a fill is fine. Fractal is good. Gradient ramp is good. Grid is good. Lens flare is great. Paint bucket. Paste a few more. Radio waves is good. Scribble's bad. Scribble. Stroke. Vegas. And right arm. So now we're going to be excluding all of these effects from our generation abilities. That should give us a bit more consistency in terms of having more actual elements that are visible. A lot of these are looking really dark. Why are these so dark? They don't appear to be dark. So like that? This is all generated from nothing, which is pretty cool. Why are these so dark? Like all this is really coming together now, but it's dark. Is it because there's alpha? Is there an alpha issue? We need to fix this and then we can kind of get more into the nitty-gritty of how that's working. So we're just saving it to a PNG. They're not changing like crazy or anything. It's very dark. I'm not super sure why it's doing this. see some blurs, which is good. I thought maybe the blurs were doing it, but maybe it's a problem with the saving as a PNG. For now, I guess we'll have to leave that. But we know it's working. Let's actually add the ability to export video. In order to do this, I'm going to use a separate script here. Just to add this to the render queue and render. We're going to render this in AME. That render. What am I missing here? I guess this doesn't have it yet. My bad. I have several automation things that I'm working on, which are coming in quite handy. In the future, we'll probably be going over how to automate thumbnail exports and that sort of thing. Right now, I'm really just working on making it work nicely. So just scraping some code here to add this to the render queue. I comment out that stuff. And instead of global folder, we want this to be, what is it called? Export folder. And background comp instead of our found comp. And then to queue this in media encoder and render it. Do that. And now we should be able to export our backgrounds and see if maybe that will get rid of the issue. We have a spelling error. Let's try it again. Have not defined found comp. Try it one more time. Okay, so we're getting a mismatch, which means that it's conflicting with the begin and end undo group. That is totally fine. In fact, for now, I can just remove the undo group, and I think things will be okay. You can see, though, that we're adding way too many videos. That's a problem. Yes. Okay, so we have some cool effects coming about, but we need to be a little bit more careful here. Let's see. We will queue these all in media encoder after our for loop. So then we should be able to reintroduce this, I believe. I don't know if I needed to delete those previous media encoder elements. Are they still there? Yeah, they definitely are. Let's try this with an empty media encoder queue. And let's try this. Okay, we have only 15 backgrounds going into there. You can see it's going to be exporting them to desktop backgrounds and naming them the same name as the composition. Perfect. So this will actually export the videos now for us. We're going to wait for one to finish to make sure we're not getting that weird like graying effect. But now the next step would be to kind of adjust things a little bit and get this ready to just kind of almost run overnight and generate hundreds or thousands of backgrounds. So one thing I've noticed is a lot of them are similar. So what are some things we can do to randomize it a bit? We could include more effect groups. We could apply even more effects. But my concern is if we just apply a ton of effects on top of each other, it may cause just destruction of the image, and in some cases that may be good, but others it may cause some undesired results. Let's see if there's any other generative categories besides generate we could use. We do have simulation, and one thing I kind of thought of, which definitely could work, is to randomize some of the values now. I think if we have some pretty strict rules, if we come across a drop down, I'm willing to change that randomly, and if we come across, say, a color, we can change that as well. The way we can detect those is by basically what type of effect parameter it is. So let's go into the scripting guide and try and find that. It should be somewhere under like effects or properties, property type. It usually gives you some kind of enumerated value, so property type. Maybe not. So we have something to detect if it's spatial. That's good for like 2D values. Property value type is what we want here. This will tell us if it's 3D, 1D, 2D, color. So let's create a function that randomizes our effect values. We'll say function randomize effect values. And we're just going to take in a property. And we're going to loop through that property. Say var p is equal to 1, p is less than or equal to our property dot num properties increment p. And each time through, I'm going to check if property dot property value type. Is that how we call it? What I'm going to do, I need to get the property value types, I think, or can we say this? If property value type is equal to property value type dot color, we'll say hello, and we'll say property dot property p dot name. This needs to be property dot property. In fact, this needs to be effect. And I'm going to run this in a separate script and just check something here. We'll say randomize effect values app.project.active item. I'm going to grab the first layer and effect 1. Don't have a closing bracket, brace. And spell right line right. And as you can see, now we've successfully detected color. Let's see if we can do this in a switch. I'm going to switch property value type in the case that it is, I guess we can say dot. It needs to be this. Let's just use if statements, make it easy. So we're going to write this in here real quick. We'll say if effect dot property p dot property value type is that. We're going to set the value to generate random color. And I don't know if that needs to be RGB. It might need to be 4. Then we're going to do our other cases. A drop-down list would be defined as what? Probably 1D. Let's say if that's the case and it's 1D, I'm going to write the name of that property. The name of it. Getting hue transform view. So view is accurate, hue transform as well, I guess. Let's see if these have min and max values. That could be important for randomizing them. It has max value and min value, but it has min. Let's say we only want to randomize this if it has a min and max value. So if property p dot has max, effect dot property p dot has min, then we'll randomize it. We're going to randomize it between, say set value between the min and the max. So the min isn't always 0, so we add that afterwards. We'll say math.random times that property dot max value plus 2 plus min value. And let's go ahead and test this. Cool, so now we're randomizing that, and it's going to be very random. I think that should be good. We don't want to mess too much with all the properties, but the 1D and the color properties should be fine to do. Generating a random color, I'm pretty sure I have code for this somewhere. Let's check GitHub. Here we go, random RGB. Just change this to instead of random color, random RGB. That's going to return 2 values. Do we want it normalized or unnormalized? What does it recommend in the guide? Normalized. So we'll say true. Or no, we'll say false. Okay, we may need to do 4 returns from that, but that's fine. We'll go ahead and paste these in here. And now, for each effect we apply, we're going to apply randomize effect values. So, first we have our generation effect. Then we have all of these, which is in a for loop, so I'll just say current overlay effect after we have our switch statement. And we can do the same for our blur effect. Now we can take a look at our render. We're about 8 videos in. Stop it though. And now we can go ahead and load them up and preview them as actual videos, which of course not all of them are animated, but you can see sometimes we do get an interesting look. So our goal is to continue working on this and getting it to produce more and more consistent results that look good. So now that we have our randomization, let's try it out. Let's go ahead and clear up the compositions here, and we'll run our script. We seem to have no issues. It looks like we're using a motion tile probably, or detail preserving upscale. That's sometimes a problem. I'm still very curious as to why we have had issues with the screenshot exports. Okay, so there's certain effects we have been applying that are really bad. Reptile. Displacement map even. And this is more often than not giving us an error, a memory issue as well. So we need to avoid a few of these if possible. We're just going to take some names here of things that we need to not use. Upscale, motion tile. What else was there? Reptile. And you can see some of these values are insane. So what I'm going to do is quarter. I'm going to quarter all of this. Min value I'm going to quarter. The max value also going to quarter. And hopefully that will reduce the intensity of everything. Like, this applied a Gaussian blur of 25,000 pixels. Honestly, I'm going to do 0.05. I'm going to do 5%. Let's try this. 0.05 out of range. 1 to 2. Oh, that's tragic. It's too small of a number, so it can't randomize between that. Okay, so we'll just multiply this whole result by that instead of the individual things. No? 12 is out of range. See, this is the main issue, is we want to make sure it is within the range, which is easiest to do if we don't change it at all. Let's have two different random cases. If it has a min and a max, if the max value is greater than, I don't know, 200, we're actually going to make two variables, temp min, temp max. And if the value is found to be too crazy, we're going to change it to be the temps. Temp max is going to be equal to 200, or yeah, we'll make it 200. We'll basically just clamp it. And same with the min value. If the min value is below negative 200, then our temp min will be negative 200. And also going to have an else for each of these. Temp max is going to be equal to the max value. And same for this. Our temp min will be our effect dot min value. Then we'll randomize between max value and min value and maybe get a bit more stable of results. Min value is undefined. Needs to be temp min. So it is applying warp stabilizer as well. Let's add that to the list. And now perusing through here, some of these are simply applying colors, it seems. Or just blurs. Oh, I guess that's the overlay, my bad. I don't see these being added to the queue. So we are coming across a few snags. In this case, it didn't create anything other than the base layer. I think I had an issue with this. I'm going to say if effect.property p dot max value is greater than 0, and we're also going to need to try and avoid these. So these are all these. So if current overlay effect dot name, we're just going to check the indexes of it. It's not equal to -1. We're checking for upscale. Or motion. Or repa. Or stabilize. Alright, I'm not sure if that'll actually help, but if that happens, we want to take our current overlay effect and simply remove it. We don't want to deal with bounds like that. So in this case, the object is invalid. Else we'll randomize it. Otherwise, it's going to try and randomize something that doesn't exist. And again, we're getting things out of range. So let's just do this. Instead of negative 200, our min's going to always be clamped at least 0. This one. Come on. 1 is out of range of 0.5. If the max value is greater than 1, so we're getting a lot of errors with the max values and things. And we're overshooting it as well. We'll figure out how to solve this, but that's a nice looking effect for randomized. It's out of range. Guess we'll just run a right line, temp max. $1.5. Let's go back to the guide. So max value Let's get the property name. White point. Value 28 is out of range 50 to 100. We create a variable for our random value. Set that equal to our randomization here. And interesting, we have an is drop down effect option. We'll just say if the only time we want to set the value is if our rand value is greater than or equal to our min, the actual min, the effect property p dot min value, and our rand value is less than our effect dot property p dot max value. And that's the only time we want to apply it, I think. Let's go ahead and try this, see if we get any errors. Seems to be working okay. And we also get through to the render process. Perfect. So let's take a little peruse and see how these are looking. We'll make the decision if we need to go into more depth or just generate a ton and see how it works. Some of these are actually looking a little bit interesting. The real question is, how many do we need to generate to get a few good ones? Looks like we're getting a crash here. We are probably applying quite a bit of stress here. I think as a last thing, what I'm going to do, I'll reintroduce this, the save frame as, change it from active item to the background comp, and let's change some of our parameter values here. So instead of generating 15, let's say num backgrounds, let's create 100. Now, I don't know what this is going to do, if it's going to crash things. But for now, what we can do is say turn off the media encoder functionality. And the number of effects we want to apply. Let's reduce it to 5. And now this should just export the imagery for us, albeit in like half alpha. Why is it doing this still? This is an interesting bug I haven't seen before, where it exports in like 50% the opacity it should. But as you can see, in a fairly quick amount of time, we're generating 100 backgrounds. I'm gonna add a suppress dialogues because we did get some pop-ups. Then end false if we don't want to display the errors. And we can reintroduce this and sort of give it one final good run here. The main thing to mess around with, if you want to mess around with this yourself, is you can adjust whatever categories you're getting things from. You can filter out more types of effects that are causing issues. You can increase the number of backgrounds you generate, as well as the number of random effects to apply on top of any generative elements. In fact, we could even make multiple generative elements if we wanted. But for now, I think it's good. Let's go ahead and run this as we finish up this tutorial. We're going to generate 100 backgrounds, render out the images and the video previews. I'm almost positive this could crash. I don't see any PNGs being saved yet. And I'm curious how After Effects will handle sending 100 jobs to the render queue at once. There's it asking to select a LUT again. It's exported random background 7. Oh, we're getting an error. Oh, I just copied this. I did not say end suppress dialogues. And I guess these are coming in a bit late here. Honestly, I don't really care too much about the thumbnails anymore because right now they're not looking so great. I may have to just render out a single frame differently. Let's turn it off and then do it again. And it looks like it's still rendering everything, it's just a bit slow, huh? So I'm actually going to really quick kill After Effects because it's still trying to process all those images coming through. And we're going to run this one last time without the PNG export. And we're just going to export basically videos. And I might actually leave this one for a while, so let's do something ridiculous. Let's say 500. Alright, but that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. That's how to make random After Effects backgrounds and automatically generate them with a script. Hopefully you learned lots about how to access the effects, randomizing values, and just overall script development from this video. I'm going to be messing around with this more and fixing it up to make sure that it generates better and better things in the future. But if you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button. Down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly on the channel. And down in the description, you can check out the code for this on GitHub. Follow us there for coding updates, and down in the description as well, you can follow us on Instagram for other updates. If you want to become a channel member, you can join our YouTube channel, become a member, supporter, premium supporter, or VIP, get cool perks, and help us out. Or you can also join the Discord server, get help with scripting, extensions, plugins, expressions, and much more. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I'm going to be sitting here working on this, generating more and more backgrounds. And if you have any suggestions for more tutorials or coding challenges like this, leave them in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.